Welcome to this week's episode of Humans in 5.
Today we'd like to talk about something where we hear very different sides of the same coin. In the words of the minister from the movie The Princess Bride, Mawwiage is what brings us here today.
We're both pushing 30, and this is the prime social time for our peers to be talking about getting hitched. As we head into wedding season, the singletons among us are constantly being asked, when are we going to settle down and partner up? Those who have already tied the knot face a lot of questions about how marriage has changed their lives and are complimented for making sure they've locked someone down before they get too old.
Now, before we get started, we will clarify that we are all about love. And if you're in a loving, caring relationship of any stripe, that's awesome. And if you aren't, that's awesome too. But as we're surrounded by social pressures to pair up and stay that way, we'd love to explore where modern weddings and marriages come from.
Anthropologists have actually found it really difficult to define and explain marriage. Many cultures have some expression of marriage in their social structure, but it can be tricky to draw parallels between cultures and time periods. However, marriage protocols and practices largely center around monopolizing sexuality and the distribution of property.
In Western societies, men monopolize a woman's sexuality, and that itself is tied to property, ownership, and inheritances. If a woman is tied to one man, it's easier for the man to guarantee paternity and make sure his kids are the ones inheriting the estate. Sound a little cold? Early on, marriage wasn't necessarily about love, particularly in the upper classes. It was more often about land rights, political ties, and status.
Modern expressions of marriage are still quite male-dominated. Women are often expected to take their husband's name, and fathers literally give brides away like a gift from one dude to another. These historical overhangs have long shadows, but times are changing. Wives have more rights, now they can have property and not just be property. However, the historic imbalance between men and women is still reflected in many traditions we'll be seeing during wedding season.
A huge tradition today is the buying and gifting of engagement rings. Today, engagement rings are perceived as a demonstration of love. However, this idea is the product of an ad campaign by the diamond giant De Beers.
In the 19th century, the South African diamond mining conglomerate were worried that the price of diamonds would eventually drop because more and more were being found each year. De Beers contracted an ad agency to create the idea that diamonds are forever, and worked to convince men that a large diamond was a measure of a man's personal and professional success and a signal of a man's love for his lady.
They worked to market an idea rather than the diamonds themselves, or even their own brand, which was hugely successful in improving their sales and keeping their position as one of the most profitable gem companies in the world. These ad campaigns were largely directed at US customers, but in the years since, they're now made all over the world. This wildly successful campaign means that in 2012, in the US alone, diamond ring sales topped over $7 billion.
Engagement rings are one side of the wedding industrial complex. However, there are a ton of other ways that weddings rack up enormous expenses. Researchers Andrew Francis Tan and Hugo Milon noted that average wedding costs in the US are just shy of $30,000. However, they were curious to see how much all those expenses translated to a happy union. Turns out, as the cost of a wedding increases, the duration of that marriage drops. Despite the marketing idea that a long marriage starts with a big wedding, divorces are more likely to happen after putting on a big show.
Now, once again, we love love, and marriage can be a beautiful joint expression of trust, commitment, and intimacy. You can have marriage without love, just as much as you can have love without marriage. But as you navigate wedding season, it's worth remembering that marriage has changed a lot.
We'll see your lovely faces next time on Humans in 5.
And don't forget to subscribe!